On December 8, 1941, the United States went to war with Japan after the dastardly attack on Pearl Harbor. The next three pictures you are going to see are pictures of Pearl Harbor after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese swarmed over the Pacific and Asia. Soon, by 1942, they had captured Burma, Thailand, Hong Kong, Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, Borneo, the Philippines, Wake Island, Guam, the Mariana and Solomon Islands. They had also landed on New Guinea, and they had pushed the Chinese army back along the coastline from three directions, and were advancing southward towards Australia, eastward towards the United States, and also, let's not forget, and west towards China and into China. But the United States began to push the Japanese back after the attack on Midway, and soon they had destroyed the carrier force in the Philippine Sea, also dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Sheet, and soon began landings in the Philippines with the invasion of Letye Island itself. The Japanese then came up with a complex three-pronged plan that would sacrifice their aircraft carrier force to annihilate the landings at Letye Gulf. They also would launch a new terrifying weapon from island bases in the Philippines, kamikaze, or suicide attack pilots. The kamikaze located enemy ships and then crashed their aircraft into them, and they were very difficult to defend against, because even if you shoot them, they're still coming at you. The Japanese then sent their center force to San Bernardino Strait. Meanwhile, the aircraft carriers would act as a decoy in the north to draw Halsey's Third Fleet away from Letye. Then the southern force would come in and annihilate the forces at Letye from the south. But the American submarines tracked the center force through the Palawan Passage to San Bernardino Strait at a range of 50 miles per hour. The submarines soon struck and sank or damaged four Japanese cruisers. And in the Sibuyan Sea, in the center of the Philippines, the United States aircraft destroyed the Japanese center force. And in the south, the 7th Fleet had several battleships which had begun the war in the mud at Pearl Harbor, annihilated the southern force, and it turned back. It had been a rout for the Japanese, but they soon launched kamikaze attacks against the Japanese fleet in the north. Against the U.S. ships in the north. And soon, the Japanese then launched their aircraft against them from the decoy carrier force. This drew Halsey to the Japanese aircraft carriers in the north, exactly what they wanted. He steamed off against them, even though his reconnaissance aircraft reported that the center force was still heading to San Bernardino Strait. So, he left the San Bernardino Strait totally unguarded and went off to destroy the aircraft carriers. So when the Japanese force sailed through San Bernardino Strait with battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, it seemed that nothing could stop them from going into Letye. The 7th Fleet guarding it only consisted of 16 slow and lightly armored escort carriers, and their screen of destroyers and destroyer escorts. The Americans took a terrible beating, with one light aircraft carrier sunk, 2 destroyers damaged, and 1 destroyer escort sunk. But such was the ferocity of the defenses that the Japanese thought they were engaging major fleet units. With victory so near in their sights, the Japanese turned and headed back where they came from. And further to the north, Bull Halsey found the aircraft carriers and sank all 4 of them, leaving the rest of the Japanese Navy to run a gauntlet back to Japan. Meanwhile, other U.S. submarines managed to picking off a light cruiser and a destroyer. But even though they had destroyed the aircraft carriers in the north, the 7th Fleet was greatly suffering casualties and was trying to nurse their wounded when suddenly they came under a heavy anti-aircraft attack of kamikaze suicide attacks. The anti-aircraft fire lighted up the skies, but it was almost no match. The kamikazes managed to destroy only 1 small escort carrier, a destroyer, and a destroyer escort. But more, however, it was a victory for the United States. The battle for Letye Gulf was the largest naval battle ever fought in American and any naval history. And when it was over, the Japanese Navy ceased to exist as a fighting unit. They lost to 4 aircraft carriers, 2 battleships, 6 cruisers, a light destroyer, and a submarine. The United States, though, suffered greatly. They lost 3 escort carriers, 1 destroyer, a battleship, and had severely damaged. More than 2,300 men were dead or wounded, but the Japanese had been annihilated at Leyte Gulf. Soon, the invasion of Japan seemed imminent, and the retaking of the Philippines was almost inevitable. But during the Battle of the Philippines, and also the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa in 1944 and 45, the United States realized that if they were going to invade Japan, they would lose nearly 1 million or more soldiers. So instead, they dropped 2 atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which officially ended World War II. The final instruments of surrender were signed on the decks of the USS Missouri, a battleship, which had been at Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese Imperial Navy, Army, Air Force, and government signed the oaths of surrender, officially ending World War II. This is to honor all the men and sailors who had died in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and all images is from the National Archives via Wikipedia site.